Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and I'm just going to show you three different ways to initially stretch your linear image. This is an image straight out of Deep Sky Stacker. I haven't done any adjustments to it. This is what is referred to as your linear image. The first thing that I recommend is to go to image mode and make sure that this is set to 16 bits per channel. Sometimes whenever you get your linear image initially out of Deep Sky Stacker or your other stacking program, it'll be set to 32-bit per channel and save it as a TIFF. But let's make sure that this is set to 16 bits per channel. And from here, we're going to we're going to right click on our background layer and select duplicate layer. And I'm just going to name this stretch 1. Click OK there, and now that this layer is highlighted, most people will go in and do their first stretch like this. They'll go in, select curves, and here you can see your data. You've got a little bit of area, a little bit of leeway in your shadow areas from your shadow or your dark point slider, and then you've got a ton of area here over where your highlight slider is and your highlight areas. So most people will kind of raise up the middle part of the curve here, and then sometimes they'll drop it back down in the shadow to kind of give a little bit of an S-curve, and then even drop down the highlights here. And what this does is it helps protect the core, your very bright areas like your brightest stars, the core of your galaxy, things like that. And let me show you, let me zoom in here. If you look in here, you'll start to see how some of these dust lanes are starting to appear a little bit more. You can see a little bit more detail into here around this area. So that's the first way to do it in curves. So I'm going to cancel this out. I'm going to show you a different way to start. You click on Image, Adjustments, Levels, and once again you're working in a kind of a similar histogram as what you see in that curves window. We can slide in our shadow or our dark point slider. That's really going to darken the image quite a bit. But then you've got your gray point slider here. You can move that towards your data to stretch it more that way. And then you've also got your highlight slider here. And whenever you slide this in, always watch your core of your galaxy and your bright stars to make sure that these aren't blowing out. So I'm going to slide this in a little bit more, and that's going to greatly brighten it up. So think about right there. So here is the after, there's the before. You can see already how much of a difference that makes. That's your second way of doing it. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that out, and then I'm going to show you a third way. You click on Image, Adjustments, Equalize. Now, don't be scared here, because I know this looks like we just completely ruined our image, and at this point we really did, but we're going to salvage this. But I wanted to show you this because it shows you where all of your data is and stacked up mostly in the brightest regions, but it also shows you what we didn't see before is these gradients in the background. We have this blue to kind of purple magenta gradient all throughout the image, and we've also got these diagonal gradient lines running through. So there's two different ways that we're going to combat this and get this back in shape. We're going to click on Edit, Fade, Equalize. We're going to set the blend mode to Overlay, and then we're going to drop the opacity slider back down to about 50%. Now usually I'm looking for a range in here of about 15% to 50%. The more you drop it down, the more it kind of smooths it out and darkens it. I like kind of like this middle ground where I still see a little bit of this banding in here, and it does kind of give kind of like this ashy gray look to the galaxy. I'll zoom in and I'll show you that. There's the before and after. So I'm going to click OK for that. I'm going to go in, and once again we have all this kind of gray ashiness around the galaxy, and we still have the banding. So I'm going to show you a third-party plugin to correct issues like this. We're going to go to Filter, Pro Digital Software, and this is a third-party plugin called Astro Flat Pro. I'm going to click on that. It's going to open up this window, and it's going to auto-apply the settings that you already have here in the sliders. Now generally the default settings for this is 20-20-20 for your smoothness, your edge cleanup, and your dark noise reduction. So let me show you what each one of these sliders do here. First of all, this image is actually pretty clean, especially around the edges here. There's no vignetting or anything like that, so edge cleanup is really not going to be very useful here. But let me zoom in and show you what the smoothness slider does. If we drop it down, it's going to reduce that stretch. It's going to start to give you more contrast, and the spiral arms, you can see the separation in through there. I'm going to raise that up to kind of retain the stretch a little bit, however. And for the dark noise reduction, if I drop this down, you can really see that noise jump back in there. So we're going to adjust the smoothness. I'm actually going to bring that up a little bit to kind of keep from these like dark halos appearing around in here. But then I'm going to drop back down the dark noise reduction, and that's going to kind of even it out. Actually, I'm going to drop the smoothness down just a little bit. Somewhere right around in through there. Looks pretty good. So here is the before and after, and we're going to go ahead and confirm that. Now here is where we would go back into our levels. So we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, Levels, and notice how we still have another gap on our shadow area here. So we're going to slide in our black point. We're going to slide in our gray point to about the first part of the data, maybe not quite that much. And then I'm going to slide in the white point slider just a little, just to kind of make these the core of the galaxy and some of the stars pop a little bit more. I'm going to confirm that, and then I'm going to repeat that step by going back into levels, and we're going to just kind of do this over and over incrementally. Actually, I'm going to drop that back down to kind of bring in a little bit more of that smoothness. I'm going to confirm that. So already we're starting to get a darker background. We're bringing out some of the blues and the spiral arms. We still have a little bit more of that kind of gray muddiness in through there. So there's different ways that we can handle that, but if you just keep repeating either that curves, levels, or that equalize type function, that will kind of get you started on your initial stretches there. So from here, I'm going to back out. I'm going to go back to where I just duplicated the layer, and I think for this particular image, I think the levels was working best for us initially. So I'm going to go back, bring up our black point slider, stretch it just slightly with the gray point slider, maybe not quite that much, bring in the highlights, click OK, zoom in. Yeah, that looks much smoother there. Now I'm going to go Image, Adjustments, Curves, stretch it this way in curves, drop back down that highlight. There you can see the before and after there. That core and the stars are really starting to show up now. I'm going to click OK. Go back into Adjustments, Levels, bring up the black point, and already you can see how that's much smoother there. I'm going to go ahead and confirm that, and I think that probably looks best out of all three of those areas. We do have a little bit of a punch out halo here. Let's go back into our Astro Flat Pro and see if it can smooth that out for us. It's going to open up the dialog box, and yeah, that's looking much better. As a matter of fact, those settings, let me drop that down a little. Bring that back up rather. There we go. So now we're starting to get more of these wispy edges, and our contrast is better, our dust lanes are starting to pop out. So I'm going to click OK from there, and notice how nice and smooth the background is. It's a huge improvement from our initial background layer. And so that's really it. That's just kind of the core functions of doing your Astro stretches. And from here we just go into enhancement, and if there's other background noise that we need to knock down, we go into that process from here.